Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/The Rob Burgess Show. Over 250,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Hello and welcome to the Rob Burgess Show. I am, of course, your host, Rob Burgess. On this, our 26th episode, our guest is Ash Burgess. But before we get to that, I need to take a moment to tell you about our sponsor. For you, the listeners of the Rob Burgess Show podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. A book which pertains to this episode is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Whatever book you pick, you can exchange it at any time, you can cancel at any time, and the books are yours to keep. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/The Rob Burgess Show. Again, that's audibletrial.com/The Rob Burgess Show for your free audiobook. Also, please make sure to comment, follow, like, subscribe, share, rate, and review everywhere the podcast is available. Whether it's iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Facebook, Twitter, Internet Archive, TuneIn, or RSS, you can find links to everything on the official website, www.therobburgessshow.com. You can also find out more about me by visiting my website, www.thisburgess.com. Back to today's show. You first heard Ash Burgess on episode 16 of the podcast. Ash Burgess has a dusty degree in religious studies, an obsession with pineapples, and an appetite for both high and low culture. She cuts her own hair, bakes her own sourdough bread, and spends most of her time with her young son. Sometimes she blogs at burgessbaby.blogspot.com. And now on to the show. Alright, welcome back to the Rob Burgess Show, Ash Burgess.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and talk about the pleasures of autumn with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we should mention that it's September 1st, and I think we're all happy to be done with August, which I think we consider the January of the summertime season.
I'm so glad I got you on board. When I first tried to tell you that August was the January of summer, you were like, what are you talking about? But yeah. After experiencing August very recently, I think now you finally come around to my way of thinking.
It's true. I mean, most of the good stuff about summer is done by this point, and it's kind of just the waiting for the next season, kind of like January. You know, it's like, yes, there's Valentine's Day or whatever, but it's really pretty barren after the Christmas season, and I think summer's pretty much the same way after July. So.
Well, for me, I mean, July is a really big month. Of course, there's 4th of July, which is very exciting, and then also it's my birthday and our son's birthday, so it's like a pretty great time. And generally, I think in July, people are in kind of full swing of like summer spirit, having a great time. By August, though, at least where we live, it tends to be just a little past the point of being too hot. And also, it's just very, very humid here in Indiana, so it's just miserable to go outside. Mm-hmm. And that makes it not fun.
Yeah, definitely. So, September, would you consider September 1st the beginning of fall?
Yes, although technically September, if you really want to go by the calendar, although, you know, there are some disputes about how you should read the calendar as far as when seasons begin and end, because some people say that, you know, first day of the season would be the solstice. Other people say that the solstice is the high point of the season. Mm-hmm. So if you're going by the idea that we have to wait for the solstice, then this is really still summertime. But to me, in my calendar, which I'm sure is based partially on just being ingrained into, like, the school year, I always say September, that's when the fall gets started. I'm ready for it. It's going. Mm-hmm. You know, best season ever.
So when would you say the end of fall is? Not to think about the end already, but if you're saying that September 1st is kind of when it starts feeling like fall, maybe not the solstice necessarily, but when would you say the end of fall is?
Sometime in the beginning of December. I mean, honestly, like I was saying, if you're really going by the calendar, most of December actually is still the fall. But I generally tend to think of Christmas as being a winter season, and as soon as December gets here, I've really turned my mind to Christmas time and like the pleasures of that season, which are somewhat distinct from the pleasures of autumn. So I would say that, I mean, maybe you could say that part of autumn's greatness is that it includes the Christmas season as well. But I think that might, yes, best season ever.
That might be a little extra annexation there that you're trying to pull off.
But not really, because I believe the winter solstice is something, is it the 21st?
It's like 4 days before Christmas.
Yeah, so I'm saying everything up until that point, and think of how much Christmassy stuff you do before you get to the solstice. All that is technically happening in the fall.
So you consider Thanksgiving to be part of the fall?
Of course Thanksgiving is part of it.
Not a winter holiday?
No, Thanksgiving is one of the autumn holidays.
I'm just saying, that's pretty greedy of fall if you think about it. They've got Halloween and Thanksgiving. I mean, those are two big ones. I mean...
But yes, that's, part of this whole fall the best time ever.
I see. Okay. So, we've talked about why it's better than wintertime and summertime. Why is it better than spring?
Spring is pretty good, but I feel like spring, maybe this is just a geographical issue too, to some degree, but spring is often a little disappointing to me weather-wise. I feel like I spend so long waiting for spring. Winter feels like it's like 6 months long. And you'll get to the point where you think it should be springtime, but you're basically still just wearing a winter coat. And then spring comes, and it's really nice for like a couple weeks. But then half the time it's raining, and then suddenly it's like roast million degrees and it's summer. Spring is nice, don't get me wrong, there's lots of nice, baby animals and Easter time and all that I do enjoy. It's just, I don't think it packs the punch of autumn. It's not as spectacular.
Yeah. So, I know we've talked about this before, but if each of the 4 seasons was a country, which holiday would be the capital of that country?
Okay, I see what you're saying. It took me a second there to get it. Okay, I think I get you now. Like, each season gets one holiday to be the capital of that season. Yes. Is what you're saying.
Yeah, so I have an opinion, but what do you think summer is? My
opinion, I'm going to say, obviously, that these opinions are based on my background, and someone else with a different background, both culturally and religiously and socially, is probably going to have different answers than me. So I'm not trying to say that everyone needs to feel this way. But I would definitely say for winter, Christmas is going to be capital of that season.
Winter, yes.
Then we've got spring. I'm going to go with Easter.
That's a pretty obvious choice, yeah.
Summer, 4th of July. Now,
fall, though.
It's a hard choice here because Halloween and Thanksgiving are both huge deals. So I think this might have to be like a co-rulership, co-capital type situation.
Capitals. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
As a child, I definitely would have said Halloween. But the pleasures of Thanksgiving have really grown larger for me over the years. I think as I've, become an adult and really started to like to cook and things like that, that's really given me a lot for Thanksgiving. That as a kid, I definitely would have been like, oh, for sure Halloween. But now, that's a really, really tough call. Yeah, definitely. Now, has fall has always been your favorite season? No, I don't think so. What was your favorite season originally? I think as a young child, I liked summertime better because my birthday's in the summer, and I think that was reason enough for me right there. And even though I was homeschooled, we did follow a fairly traditional school calendar, so summertime we were off from school. So, I mean, having your birthday and, being on summer vacation, that adds a lot of excitement. So I think I would have said definitely the summer. Probably I wouldn't have thought about it very much beyond that, though. Like, I don't think I would have sat down and analyzed what do I really like the most. Because if I had actually thought it through, I think I probably still would have picked the autumn. I think it's just that would have been my kind of impulse reaction to say summer. When did you start liking Halloween? Halloween specifically, I mean, I've always liked Halloween pretty well. my mom threw us a couple Halloween parties when we were really little kids that were a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
She did a lot of like really creative different things and she had a bunch of, we had a bunch of family friends and people that came, and those were a good time. And she used to always make our Halloween costumes,
mm-hmm.
which, to varying degrees of success, but still that was exciting. Like, I appreciate the effort she put into that.
Oh, definitely. Now, what was your favorite Halloween costume growing up?
Oh, as a small child, I think my favorite was one year I was a spider.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so fun because, and this was a costume that my mom made for me, and I had, of course, my own arms, but then she made some extra arms out of, just, I think, tubes of fabric or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But she tied strings to them and attached them to the cuffs of my sleeves so that whenever I moved my arms around, the spider's other arms would move with me. And I had so much fun in that costume. I mean, you can imagine, a little kid, skipping around and moving the arms around and everything. And I'm not even a person that's, like, that into spiders, but it was just a really fun costume for a small child.
Right. Now, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but the lamb.
There've been some costume misfires too.
Yeah.
My brother had a costume one year when he was pretty little, and it was supposed to be, I believe it was supposed to be a dinosaur, because he was really into dinosaurs, and it was a really cool looking costume. It was the kind of thing where the mouth kind of went out, so that the mouth was a hood, I guess you would say, with his head kind of sticking out. Does that make sense? And he was really excited about it until he went somewhere to some kind of Halloween thing with a bunch of other little kids, and they all said that he looked like an alligator, and he was super depressed about it, and then they kept closing the mouth, and of course when they closed the mouth, they were like closing it over his face, so he was really, really sad about that, and that didn't go so well. And let's see, another costume misfire. One year I was a knight, because I was so obsessed with knights for the longest time. That was like what I wanted to grow up to be, which is, a very unrealistic dream. But, you'll have to have goals.
There's Ren Fair.
Sure. But, and I had made myself a cardboard sort of a breastplate, and it was a great suit of armor, but the problem was that it went down a little bit too far so that it restricted my leg movement. And I didn't really notice that this was a problem, of course, until we went trick-or-treating, and we got out, and we went trick-or-treating we had a couple kids that we would go with, usually, and, I was one of the youngest kids already, and I was the only girl, too, so I'm trick-or-treating with my brother and these two other boys, and, of course, the plan is to hit as many houses as we can get to, so, I mean, we would go hard. I mean, we would start, at the very, very earliest we could get our parents to let us go, and we would go until, 10 o'clock at night, but running from house to house to get as much candy as possible. And so, of course, I'm kind of doing a little duck waddle, not able to fully run, going after everybody. The classic younger sibling going, wait for me, guys, wait for me.
Yeah.
Until finally I just, ripped the bottom of my costume so I could run. But it was a hard call because I loved that costume so much. I was like, I don't want to rip it. But then it was just, I had to do it.
Right.
So.
Now, your parents, did they do the thing where they would drive you from people's house to house, or did you do, neighborhoods more?
No, we would go to a neighborhood, and my parents would be there with us, but they would just drive us to a neighborhood because, we lived out in the country.
Right.
So they would drive to a neighborhood that seemed like a likely place for, trick-or-treating. And we would hit the whole neighborhood, and sometimes we would then drive to another neighborhood. We would, when I say we would go hard, I was being serious.
So did you try to find, the ritzier neighborhoods to go to because they had the better candy, or how did you choose the neighborhood?
We tried different things different years, and we really thought this out, and we really developed some theories about where the best places were to go. And really just a nice middle-class neighborhood is the best place to go trick-or-treating. Because a lot of the poorer neighborhoods, people don't even trick-or-treat there, because they're probably just all taking their kids to a nicer place to go trick-or-treating, is what I suspect, because a lot of them, won't even be home or whatever.
Right.
And it's you don't feel as safe walking around, and we tried trick-or-treating in apartment buildings before. That was a huge disaster. It didn't really go that well. Not a huge disaster, just not, great success.
Mm-hmm.
But ritzier neighborhoods, because we did try that a couple times, because we're like, okay, rich people, they'll have all the really good candy.
Mm-hmm.
I would say no, not at all, though. I mean, some of the rich people definitely would have great stuff, like full-size candy bars.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them would have just good but inappropriate things, like caramel apples. And it's like, we're not going to eat these caramel apples that you, like, made yourself. You're a stranger.
Yeah.
Or, like, popcorn balls or something like that. That's just, like, an inappropriate thing to give to, like, strange children that are, like, trick-or-treating at your house, like, in this day and age. It's not considered, you know.
Right.
But a lot of them really stingy, like, you know, single, tiniest size Tootsie Rolls, individual unwrapped M&Ms, things like that. A lot of people in the ritzier neighborhoods give the worst stuff, yeah.
Individual unwrapped M&Ms?
Yeah. Individual unwrapped, you know those circus peanuts?
Oh, no.
Yeah, like things like that. So yeah, we quickly learned, like, a nice, just middle-class neighborhood where they have, people have enough money to spend on buying Halloween candy, but just like a lot of, like, young families, they're excited about Halloween themselves. You know, they'll usually have little kids with them that are helping hand out candy to the trick-or-treaters. People, I feel like those are the neighborhoods where people are usually really into it, and they give out the best candy.
Now, did you ever have the dentist that gave out the toothbrushes happen to you?
I don't know for sure that they were a dentist, but of course, yeah. You know, toothbrushes, pennies, other sad items.
Pennies, yikes. Now, you mentioned circus peanuts. What other dismal candy was on your list of, like, just throwing this out, basically, as soon as we get home?
Well, these seem to be very, very popular, so I know that there must be people that love these, and for years, I didn't know what they were called. I just called them the black and orange candies, and I've recently realized that I think they're called, like, Mary Janes or something like that, and it's, you know what I'm talking about, they're wrapped in sort of a waxed paper. Some of them are black, and I believe those might be maple flavored, and the orange ones are maybe peanut butter flavored, or maybe they're both the same flavor, I'm not entirely certain, but... Yeah. I think those are horrible. I mean, not just because first of all, they do taste horrible. Like, they're not good. They're also, like, you can never tell if they've been tampered with or not, because the wrapping always looks messed up. Yes. Like, whatever that crinkly, wax papery stuff that they wrap them in, it always looks terrible. So you could never tell if someone's, like, unwrapped it and poisoned it and rewrapped it. Yeah. And my parents were, like, as much as they were very loose about letting us, you know, do, like, really hardcore trick-or-treating, they were always really hardcore about, like, checking over all the candy to make sure that no one had done anything to it. And those were, like, you know, suspicious. And even as a little kid, I remember looking at those and thinking, you know, these would be the ones, like, if I was going to do something.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, then I think even those, like, wax paper, whatever, I feel like those would melt to the things a lot of times if you ever did try to eat those, and it was, like, piece of paper in your mouth, like, surprise, while you, like, try to enjoy this terrible candy. Now, didn't you say that when your parents would check over the treats, sometimes some of the best ones would come up missing, you know?
There would always be
taken
a few,
for closer inspection.
A few peanut butter cups that my mom would be like, I don't know if these are okay, I'll have to set these aside to look at more closely later.
Exactly. Now, as you got older and stopped trick-or-treating, you obviously continued to like Halloween, but that was probably more for just hanging out with friends reasons. I'm sure you still did stuff that wasn't trick-or-treating.
Well, I mean, I should say, first of all, that I'm one of those people that trick-or-treated, like, until they were, like, halfway through high school. Mm-hmm. Like, we kept going for a long time.
Right.
But even after that, I would go out with friends and do fun stuff, mm-hmm. and so I always liked that aspect of it. Mm-hmm. And it's not just the going out on Halloween night. Mm-hmm. I like just the seasonal decorations, because I'm really into spooky stuff. So, and pumpkins, I'm really into pumpkins. And so there's all kinds of, other things that have to do with Halloween mm-hmm. beyond just, like, Halloween night. Like, just sort of the whole, like, ghost stories, and I've always really been into, like, stories about vampires ever since I was a little kid, stories mm-hmm. about witches. I mean, because I was really into, like, Roald Dahl, so, like, the mm-hmm. witches and all that kind of stuff that I really liked, and just,
Mm-hmm. So, what were your favorite, like, scary stories? Like, was there, like, a particular type of scary story? You said vampires you were into, or? I'm
going to try to think about when I really first got into scary stories. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I have an answer for that as far as, like, I can remember, because my parents used to read to us, mm-hmm. usually, it would be, like, an every night before bed type of thing. I can remember one of the first really scary stories I can remember. I don't even know what this book was. It was something about, and I'm sure if I was to ever find this book, I'm sure it wasn't even scary.
Mm-hmm.
It was a children's chapter book, and my dad was reading this aloud to me and my brother. But it was kind of something that my brother had picked, and he's a little older than me.
Right.
And this book was about a vampire that was living in the basement of a library, and I don't even remember any details of really what happened in the story, so much as just, I remember my dad would be reading the story, and I remember I was laying there in my bed at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, at the time, we were living in my Uncle Bill's house,
Mm-hmm.
and my brother and I were, like, sleeping in sleeping bags, and he has kind of like a screened-in, except it's glassed-in walls,
Mm-hmm.
and he had hops, like, you know, for beer making that he was growing, and he grew the hops up on the outside of his house,
Mm-hmm.
so his walls, instead of having curtains, just the outside was covered with the hop vines.
Mm-hmm.
But so, being a little kid, and you're laying there in a sleeping bag, and you're right beside this window it's covered in all these vines, and just, my dad's reading this story about this vampire that's living in the basement of the library, and I remember the detail of, like, the kid is seeing this vampire, and it has these glowing red eyes, and I remember just laying there in my sleeping bag, just, like, shuddering with fear. And that was probably really the beginning of me and scary stories, if I have to say. I'm not sure, but that's kind of my main memory of, like, how that got kicked off. And then, but yeah, I was really into a lot of, like, you know, I read a lot of kids' stories about vampires, and I've always kind of gravitated towards that.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you ever like haunted houses, or were you against those?
I wouldn't say I'm against haunted houses. I haven't been to that many haunted houses. There was, my parents, very, like, strange kind of hit and miss, like, you unexpected, like, things that they were, like, okay with and not okay with.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like they would never have been okay with taking us to, like, a traditional haunted house. I mean, when we were older, like, I can remember once when I was maybe middle school age,
Mm-hmm.
my stepdad took us to, like, a haunted house. But other than that, my parents, I don't think, like, my original, like, biological set of parents would have never been into that kind of thing. They did always take us to this really cool event that would happen, this haunted hayride that would happen every year.
Mm.
And it was really neat. I think it was put on possibly by Harmony School. I'm not really sure. Just a school in Bloomington.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a bunch of different acts that the kids would put on. And so you're on the hayride, and then you would stop at different stations.
Mm-hmm.
And then there would be a play. And it was usually something famous, like, you know, there would be a scene where they would do the witches from Macbeth.
Mm.
And then the ride would take you a little further, and then you'd stop somewhere, and someone would be doing a scene from The Raven.
Mm.
And then you'd go a little further, and things like that. So, just really fun, sort of, I guess, like a, kind of a, for literary people, you know, newly educated people, children's Halloween type of event.
Sure.
But that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds good. Now, like, did you go to any corn mazes during this time?
No, I don't think I ever went to a corn maze until... Actually, the first corn maze I ever went to was with you,
right.
when we were in college, so...
Yes. Yeah, I don't think I went to any corn mazes as a kid either, but...
No, because, I mean, as much as I'm saying, like, my family did stuff for Halloween, like, my family really were not people that ever did a lot for any holiday.
Interesting.
So I think I honestly, the older I've gotten, the more I've kind of taken my own initiative. I'm a person, I've really expanded how much I'm celebrating the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
My family was always, like, pretty modest about how much they would do for any holiday.
Do you think you celebrate extra because of that?
Maybe, because I think I always looked at people that were doing more and kind of thought, you know, I want that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, why not experience the splendors of the season to their fullest?
Oh, definitely. So now, speaking of scary stories, Halloween movies we always watch every year.
Yes, I mean, that's definitely part of why I like Halloween, is that I'm so into, you know, scary movies, and there are a few that I absolutely have to watch every year. Like, I think my top.
All right, let's hear about it.
All right, let's start with maybe not my top one, but one that I found, like, some of these movies, I feel like I have a lot of issues with them. Like, there's things about a lot of these movies that I don't even necessarily like, but somehow these are just the movies I come back to over and over again. The Craft.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about this with my sister recently because she was saying that she's heard that apparently they're remaking The Craft. And we're both very upset about this because it does not call out for remake. There's no reason to remake this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's the kind of movie where it has some special effects that aren't great. but they're really of their time.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't really need to be changed. And it stars Neve Campbell, and she's so of her time as well.
Oh, yes.
There's really, you know...
Much to her chagrin, I'm sure.
Yes.
I'm sure she would have liked to have been a little more timeless than she turned out to be.
Actually, it's interesting because The Craft stars not only Neve Campbell, but also Skeet Ulrich, a pair who returned to star together in another one of the movies I'm going to talk about soon, which I'm sure you can anticipate what I'm referring to.
I think I get what you're saying.
But yeah, no, The Craft, if for anyone who's not familiar with it, is a great, I would not say great movie. It's a very, it's a very watchable film about a young girl who goes to Catholic school and falls in with kind of a group of witches, and it's all about, you know, power spiraling out of control and kids trying to use witchcraft to better their situation and things not going well. And there's something about it that just, you know, I return to it every year despite the fact that it's really just not so good.
Now, who's that one girl that's, like, really distinctive looking in The Craft that's not in anything else? Or maybe she is in other things, but I don't know it.
I know she's been in at least a few other things, but she's very distinct looking. And she is actually one of the reasons why I don't think that they should remake The Craft. Because this girl, whose name I'm trying to remember right now, is just so uniquely terrifying.
It's like her eyes.
It's like I want to say it's Fairuza.
Yeah, that sounds
but
right.
Fairuza Balak.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that because I think that's wrong. It's like I'm pronouncing it wrong. I want to say it's like something similar to that. But she is a uniquely terrifying individual. I mean, she doesn't even really have to do anything. Just everything about her presence on screen is just... I've never seen anyone that I was as truly horrified by as this person. So I think right there, it's like they will never cast anyone better than that in the role. And I'm so sorry I can't remember the correct, you know, exactly what her name is.
That's okay. I'm sure we'll...
It's like it's either like Fairuza or Faruna. I will look this up at some point and get this figured out.
That's fine. So what else? Let's hear that.
I also am, of course, like so many people, really into the movie Hocus Pocus. And it's interesting because I've realized in the last couple of years that Hocus Pocus has a huge following, mostly women, somewhat within my age category. And that's really odd because Hocus Pocus, in case anyone is not familiar with it, is, and I know you have some feelings about this, but Hocus Pocus is a children's movie, supposedly. We'll get back to that. Supposedly a children's movie. I'm not even sure if it went to theaters or if it was just made straight to video for like ABC Family.
It wasn't definitely in theaters.
Okay, in theaters, but I know that it airs every year on ABC Family, or I guess now they're like Freeform or something like that. But anyway, that station's 13 Nights of Halloween. It's one of their staples, you know, in circulation, so people see it. It's one of those movies that people will watch every day for like the entire month of October because they're like so into it. And there's drinking games, but yes, I've looked.
What's the drinking game?
I don't know exactly, but I've seen some instructions for drinking games. There are drinking games. I
have a drinking game for that movie.
Okay, I mean, and the thing about that movie, though, it's supposedly a children's movie, and I did see it when I was young. And it was truly horrifying. Like, honestly, I think I was more scared watching that movie as a young child than I was when I was slightly older watching, like, a true horror movie. I mean, I won't let our son watch that movie for a very long time.
Never.
I mean, I think he just scarred forever. Then, sidebar. I do wonder sometimes, because there's things that I see, and I'm like, I don't want my son to watch this, because he'll be scarred by this forever. But then again, I think, like, I was probably scarred by that forever too, but maybe that's why I take such delight in horror movies now, and that's not really a bad feature of my personality, so shouldn't he have the same opportunities?
Yes, you were messed up just enough for it to be charming, as opposed to terrifying.
But yes, it's a truly horrifying film about witches that want to suck the life force out of young children.
And the guy that gets turned into a cat?
Yes, there's a guy that gets turned into a cat, and he has to be a cat for like 400 years or something, and it's really, really awful. But I think, I've tried to think about what is it about this movie that makes it so delightful to people who love the Halloween season. And I think a lot of it is just that they do such a good job with just the atmosphere, the set design. I mean, it's set in like a charming, picturesque New England town, And we've got all the splendorous fall leaves. Everything's just looking amazing. All the houses are decorated for fall. Everybody there is really into the season. So it's just the sets, just, you know, you're passing house after house with pumpkins and scarecrows and corn cobs, and it just all looks amazing. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, you just want to live inside that movie. I mean, not the part where the witches are trying to, like, suck away your life force, but just the decor. Like...
Mm-hmm. Why can't we just live in that world without those three?
I would be up for that.
But that's where they live. So.
And, I mean, let's not forget, little tiny cute baby version of Thora Birch is in that movie.
Oh, yes, that's true. She's probably the best part of that movie, I think.
I mean, she's truly charming. Like, you can see in that movie she's definitely a star. Yeah. I mean, I know things haven't gone so well for her lately, and there's, you know, she's gotten super weird, but she definitely has a certain star power to her.
Mm-hmm. Sarah Jessica
Parker, and see, that's the thing, I don't even like Sarah Jessica Parker.
I don't like her.
And I don't like the witches in that movie. I think they're terrible. I feel like, in addition to the fact that movie's horrifying, part of the reason I think that movie's not for children is that there's a lot of very sexually inappropriate themes in that movie.
Gosh,
like, especially the Sarah Jessica Parker witch. Like, she's almost, like, very, like, molesty in like, the way that she approaches the children. It's very inappropriate and extremely creepy, and it really makes my skin crawl, not in, like, a horror movie kind of way, but just as, like, a human being.
Yeah, that's still one of your favorites.
There's just something about it. I just every year I have to watch it. It just makes me feel like it's Halloween. It's so good.
Fair enough. There's no favor for taste, I guess. What else? What else you got on your list?
Well, the other movie that I was going to say that makes me really feel like Halloween is Trick or Treat. Now, that's a movie that I discovered later on in my life. I mean, you know, just within the past, whenever it came out, and it's a little bit more new, because as I'm sure you're starting to catch on, a lot of these movies that I've mentioned so far are kind of, you know, the 90s. It was a good time for a lot of us. But Trick or Treat is another movie that's just kind of such a great setting, like a town that's really decorated for and celebrating Halloween. Mm-hmm. And it has Anna Paquin in it. I'm a huge fan of hers. Mm-hmm. And a lot of other people. I don't want to say too much about it, just because, I mean, people can just watch the movie themselves. But you can ask me, you know, questions about it or whatever if you
What year did it come out?
That I'm not clear on. I never remember what year movies come out. Okay. I know it was more recent than the other movies that I've mentioned so far, because Anna Paquin is an adult in it. Mm-hmm. And she's about, you know, the same age as us, so. Mm-hmm.
Is there any other movies on your list?
Yes. I mean, the other movie that I definitely wanted to mention that I have to watch every year is Scream. Mm-hmm. And that's what I was referring to when I was saying another movie starring Neve Campbell and Skeet Ulrich. Mm-hmm. Now, Scream, I would say, was the first true, like, adult horror movie that I ever watched. Mm-hmm. And it's also definitely the first slasher movie I ever saw. Mm-hmm. And while it's probably what really started me saying, I love horror movies, I'm going to watch a lot of them, it also ruined me for slasher movies forever.
Why? Because they, like, explain all the tropes of the horror slasher movies?
Exactly. And because so much of that movie is designed from the perspective of someone who's already seen all these other movies, and it's like a reaction to them. But
so it's interesting that you, like, came into it that way.
Yeah, I came into it seeing that movie, and that movie, I really watched that movie the first time as, like, a mystery. Mm-hmm. Like, I really wanted to solve the mystery. Like, I thought, you know, I can figure out who the killer is, and, you know how you watch a mystery, and you're kind of watching with the detective trying to figure out, you know, who did it as they try to figure it out, and I was watching it with that kind of perspective of, you know, you figure out who did it, you get away, you save yourself, you know, and so it was, you know, pretty jarring for me then to go back and watch all these other slasher movies, and I would say I'm not even that into slasher movies. Like, Scream is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it just ruined the whole genre for me.
I see. Yeah, no, I like Scream a lot. Now, the sequels, do you think that they lived up to the original in any way?
No, but I mean, I think number 2 was a decent go at it. Mm-hmm. And number 3 was just so bad.
What about number 4?
Number 4 was not horrible. I mean, number 4 didn't really have the core for me. Like, the original movie was something that you could really get into. Mm-hmm. But to be fair, I also watched the original movie at, like, probably the exact right time in my life, age-wise. I mean, not only was it the first slasher movie I ever saw, it was also, like, there were a lot of themes in it that were very interesting to me, like the main character losing her virginity and all the sort of high school politics that were going on in the story were all themes that were very interesting to me as, like, a young high school girl.
Sure.
So I probably, like, attached myself to those characters and thought more about what they were going through than it's possible for me to do with, you know, a movie about a high school student that I'm seeing, like, right now. Because there's so much, you know, so much time has passed. But Scream 4, I think, was a decent effort. It's definitely worth seeing.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think your loving of that movie had anything to do with the fact that Kevin Williamson wrote it and you also were watching Dawson's Creek at the time?
Well, you know what? I actually wasn't watching Dawson's Creek at the time.
You weren't?
I believe. No, I wasn't allowed to watch Dawson's Creek until it was probably after I saw that movie at some point that I began watching Dawson's Creek. So that movie may have been my real first introduction to Kevin Williamson, because no, I wasn't allowed to watch Dawson's Creek. My parents considered it to be inappropriate and unwholesome.
Now, your parents are not, like, do you want to say anything about their belief system, or?
I think that, I mean, they've gone through many different phases and developments and kind of, you know, their beliefs and what they're going for. But I think they've always
I don't want to tell tales out of school here, but they don't strike me as the most puritanical people in the world.
But in some ways,
I didn't know them when they were raising you when you're a younger age. So I know people are a little stricter sometimes when kids are younger or whatever. But
yes, I mean, people are stricter when kids are younger. But I wouldn't say that they've ever been puritanical. But I would say that they've had certain very strong beliefs about you know, what kind of media that they wanted us to consume and things like that.
What would you say their main concerns with the media that you consume? I mean, Halloween is definitely rife with a lot of probably danger zones for this kind of thing, but...
I mean, they really didn't want us to see anything with a lot of violence. Like, they didn't consider any sort of, like, gratuitous violence to be something that we should be watching. Like, to them, like, my mom would always say she would rather us see something with, like, a sex scene than something with, like, a murder. But even...
It's often happening in combination in horror movies.
Yeah, but also just, I think, contextually, too. She's very concerned about the context of things happening, and just really didn't want us watching things that, you know, had, like, values that they weren't trying to instill in us. But it's interesting, because I feel like a lot of things slip through the cracks, because, like I'm saying, I mean... I wasn't allowed to watch Dawson's Creek, but then here I am watching Scream. So it's like, but of course I did watch Scream while I was on on a trip visiting my dad, and we were, like, at my aunt and uncle's house, and I watched it with my brother and my cousin. So, I mean, that was, like, a thing where I'm sure if my mom had been there, she would have been like, stop, or whatever. But, you know,
So, what do you think your taste... I mean, there's no way to know this for sure, but, like, how do you think your taste would be different if they had just been like, go ahead and watch what you want?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say, because I definitely remember, I mean, we had friends that would watch just whatever. I mean, just even as little kids that would watch horror movies and stuff.
Right.
And, I mean, they were into those things, and I honestly think it would have been too scary for me, some things. I mean, because I was scared by some... I mean, maybe not mild, because I think these things are truly scary, but, like, things like, you know, Roald Dahl's The Witches, it was, you know, terrifying to me when I read that.
Right.
I enjoyed being terrified, though, so I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say, is this something that I like more because I didn't get to see it until a certain point, or is it just part of my personality that I gravitate towards these things? I think I do maybe gravitate towards these types of things.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably true. But now that you're a parent, do you see their point?
To a certain extent, yes. It's difficult, though, because, of course, when I was, you know, a kid living at home, you know, petitioning for months to be allowed to watch Dawson's Creek, because I wanted to be hip and with it like all the other cool kids, you know. Exactly. You know, of course, I'm thinking, you know, I'll never be ridiculous like this with my own kids. But now, of course... I don't know, because on the one hand, I don't want to make my kids into weirdos by, like, not allowing them to experience the things that everybody else is experiencing. Because I do think that when you restrict media from your children, it does make them, it loses for them a touchstone that they would have for a commonality with other people of their generation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like in many ways, in certain ways, I don't have as much in common with a lot of people. And part of that is because I don't have a lot of the common media experiences that a lot of people had as little kids.
Mm-hmm.
So in some ways, I don't want to deprive him of those things, but in other ways, I've become more concerned about, well, with him, I mean, he's a very sensitive person, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to scare him and, like, traumatize him. So I try to, keep it light.
Mm-hmm.
And as he gets older, too, though, I'm more concerned with just the messages that things send about the relationships between men and women. And there's a lot of that in horror movies.
Well, I was going to mention, I feel like the slasher movie genre especially is very misogynistic. Like,
Well, it is. And I mean, okay, like, for example, what I was talking about with the movie Scream, and, like, how as, like, a, virginal young girl, I was fascinated with the aspect of that movie where the main character is with her boyfriend, and she's, like, been holding out, and he wants to have sex, and she's, doesn't want to do it, and eventually she does it, and then, of course, right after that, she finds out that, he is a serial killer. I mean, and just, there's so much in that that's like, what a dark message about, human sexuality.
right.
And for, there's so, and that probably twisted my mind so much. I mean, we'll probably never know how that's like,
Wow.
damaged my, like, whole, worldview and, like, fantasy life, like, who knows what,
Right. Who knows how these things form. Yeah, that's interesting. Now to get back to Kevin Williamson, had you seen? What you did last summer come out before Scream or after? I forget. They came around very similar.
They were a very, very similar
period.
time period, but I don't know because, again, I wasn't allowed to see that. I was only able to watch Scream because, like I said, I was visiting my dad, and I was on a trip and just, with my older brother and my cousin. And so, that was like outside of the normal realm of, like, just Ash at home trying to go to the movies or whatever. I wasn't allowed to go see that, so I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely around the same time, though.
Mm-hmm.
The first horror movie that I was allowed to go see in theater was Blair Witch.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
And I don't know why my parents finally just gave in on that. I think they just I think maybe partially they were seduced by the filmmaking aspect of it, because I was really into, like, thinking about maybe that I wanted to do some filmmaking, and I think maybe they thought it was, about filmmaking. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, people have good intentions, and then they just, sometimes they just go off the rails. At, like,
Sure.
I have no idea why they picked that moment to just be, like, fine. Or maybe, I mean, I was probably, 16, 17 by then.
Yeah.
I think at that point they were just like, we're not going to be able to stop you. Her friends have cars. She's probably just going to go anyway if we say no. And that movie was a huge disappointment for me because there was so much build-up.
Mm-hmm.
So many people had already seen it at the point that I went to see it and said,
Mm-hmm.
this is the scariest movie ever. It's just truly horrifying. And so I was, like, really in, like, true horror, like, clinched in the theater, just, white-knuckling my seat, waiting for something that was horrifying beyond my wildest dreams to occur. And see, I think that's my problem. Here's my problem with horror movies, and this is probably why I can handle horror movies and don't get too scared, is that nothing that a movie has ever shown me has been scarier than what I anticipate when someone says that something's going to be scary.
That's probably true for a lot of people.
Yeah, so when someone says this is going to be scary, like, what I imagine could happen is just beyond what is ever happening in a movie, and I don't want to see a movie that, like, takes it that far. But still, so before I figured this out about myself, though, I'm just sitting there in Blair Witch waiting for it to be the most horrifying thing that I've ever seen, and being like, how am I even going to survive, making it through the theater, like, just, and so then when it just kind of ended, I was just kind of like, oh.
I liked that movie a lot. I actually thought it was great when I saw it, but maybe I don't have as vivid of an imagination as you do. I don't know. I loved how you didn't see what was I never saw The Witch, Of course, the sequel ruined everything, but, But I don't know. I liked that, but
I just wasn't into it. I think it was just a case of having such high expectations But that's another thing that I've learned as I've gotten older. I've learned that if you go into things with moderate... Well, if you go into things with moderate expectations, it sometimes allows you to enjoy them more. Like movies like The Craft, that I mentioned earlier. If you go into that with high expectations, you're not going to have a good time.
Right.
Go into that with very, very, very low expectations.
Oh, boy.
And you will find things to enjoy about it.
Yes. Small dreams are the key to a happy life, I guess. What other horror movies are on your list?
I think those are probably, like, my top. Those are the ones that I just must see every year. Unless, do you think I've forgotten anything? I mean, you know me.
Those are the big ones. I mean,
my big...
you keep those kind of close to the vest until close to Halloween, right? You don't want to blow your wad before you get right to the holiday.
I save those, like, for the holiday itself. I tend to watch movies that I'm less attached to, kind of leading up to.
Lead up to that, yeah. Now, is there, like, a genre of horror movie that you just don't like at all? That you just not into? You mentioned you like vampires and witches and that kind of stuff, but...
I wouldn't say that I don't like it at all, because I've definitely watched a few of these, and there's some that I like, but I'm not that into torture porn.
Saw, I'm
not that into. But I will honestly say, I thought that Hostel and Hostel Part 2 were pretty good.
Those are great. I thought those were very well made.
Especially Hostel Part 2. I actually thought that was a very, very strong offering. And those are just... I can't watch movies like that too often, though, because they give me such bad dreams. Mm-hmm. Like, they just, like, I don't like movies that make you feel bad in the end. Like, I guess if I had to say there's not so much a genre that I don't like movies with unhappy endings. And of course you could say every horror movie has an unhappy ending because all these bad things have happened. But I like it when a couple people survive at the end and are, like, you know, recovering and it's, like, going to be all right. Mm-hmm. I don't like when it's just, like, endless misery. That just makes me feel terrible. Mm-hmm. Ooh, another movie, though, that I love that made me think of this, The Descent.
Oh, yeah,
that's very high up on my list.
I like that one a lot, yeah.
It's a great...
Well, we saw that one in theaters.
We did, and that was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun.
But just, yeah, in general, I don't like when it's just very sad. And I'm not that into supernatural horror. I would say, I mean, I like a moderate amount of supernatural.
What would you define as supernatural horror? Demonic possession?
Yeah, okay, demonic possession is exactly what I'm not really into. Although there are, of course, even examples of that I'm into.
Like what?
I love Insidious.
Oh, I did not like that.
I thought that was so good.
Too scary?
Oh, I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah.
But in general, I'm not into that kind of thing. Like, The Exorcist didn't really do anything for me.
I think The Exorcist may be my favorite horror movie.
It just doesn't...
It's probably the scariest horror movie I've ever seen.
I think that does have to do more with, like, the, you know, principles that you're raised with.
Well, I mean, I should mention that I was raised in the Episcopal Church, and I definitely had a very... You know, there are other denominations that definitely emphasize the devil more, I'm sure, but, you know, I think that whole Catholic, Episcopalian, Protestant, they definitely, you know, hell's a very real part of it. And
sure, but I mean,
I think the devil unwillingly coming into your life is a very real fear, as at least it was for me.
I think for you, that was a very real fear, but I feel like...
That definitely touched off a certain nerve in my brain at the right time or the wrong time, however you want to look at it, that, you know, that I think that is probably the scariest horror movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, and to me, I guess I've never been... For whatever reason, I've never been extremely fixated on, like, the fear of, like, demonic possession. Like, I'm kind of like, eh.
Well, good for you. I wouldn't recommend it, but...
There are other things that I think are scarier. Like, I think shapeshifters are much more scary.
What's a good shapeshifter movie?
I don't even know if there is a good shapeshifter movie, because
it's
too hard to... It's too hard to really do a good shapeshifter movie. I don't think they've done it yet. I would say, like, as far as where could you find a shapeshifter in media... There are shapeshifters in True Blood. They're actually, though, the shapeshifters in True Blood are mostly good. But I still think the idea of a shapeshifter is truly horrifying to me, because with a shapeshifter, like, I could be talking to you right now and it's not really you. Or you could be talking to me, but it's not really me.
Right.
That's truly horrifying to me.
Are they usually, like, secondary creatures in the universe that they're in? They're never usually, like, the main ones, right? I mean...
I think that's probably why there's not that many good shapeshifters. Yeah, I mean, Animorphs. There might be an Animorphs movie. I don't know.
Oh, there is. It might have been made for TV, but I think there was.
But no, I think there's not a lot of. Well, there would have to be a lot of special effects for a shapeshifting movie, first of all.
Only for the part that shapes, and as long not necessarily. I guess if you want to show them shapeshifting, yeah.
Well, and I'm thinking, like, when I say shapeshifters, I'm not talking so much about a person or an entity or being, demon, whatever, that can turn into one specific thing, like the Animorphs. Forgive me if I'm wrong.
I might be wrong, too.
Each Animorph has a single thing that they can turn into, right? Like, you know, if you're the Hawk Animorph, you're just a guy, and then you can be a hawk. Yeah. Whereas the true shapeshifters that I'm horrified by are more the kind where they can just impersonate anyone.
Mm-hmm. What about mermaids?
I don't like mermaids so much. Okay, there's a really horrifying movie that Jonathan, actually, who I know has been on your podcast a few times, made me watch with him, called She Creature.
Oh, yes.
And I was already horrified by mermaids, but She Creature really just confirms all of my worst fears.
Stay away from them.
But even movies that are supposed to be lighthearted about mermaids, like, what is that one, like Splash or whatever? It's the one with, like, Tom Hanks, and the mermaid is named, like, Madison.
Oh.
And that's how the name Madison got super popular. But anyway, even in that movie, in the end, I mean, they kind of imply that she kills him.
Do they? I don't really.
I mean, they go down in the water, and it's like, what do you think's going to happen?
That's the danger. They call you towards the rocks or whatever.
That's the whole point of the mermaid, is that they lure you in and then they, like, murder you. Mm-hmm. Mermaids are terrible, and you know what else is terrible? Is the movie The Little Mermaid. The captain is never going to watch that movie.
All right, do tell.
Okay, I did see that movie in theaters as a young child. It was one of the first movies I saw in theaters, and I enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. But this is more going with what I was saying about how now I'm more worried about the messages that movies have about, like, men and women and how people should be with each other. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the mermaid has a beautiful singing voice, and she trades her voice for legs so she can go up on land and meet the prince. And it's like, you won't be able to talk to him, but you can now be together. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you will be mute in exchange for getting, like, be with the guy you want to be with. And of course it's a trick, and then it's, like, not even working out, and she's mute so she can't, like, help herself. But it's like, the whole just way that thing, they go about that, it's just such a horrifying concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, I mean, it does have some really great musical numbers.
Mm-hmm. As most Disney things do.
I have heard that there have been a lot of strange drowning incidents, though, because have you heard of those mermaid fin things?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
There's, like, the mermaid fin that you strap onto your feet, and a lot of people get in those, and then they, like, flounder in the water, and it's, like, not good.
Yikes.
I've also seen another thing that's getting really popular lately are photo shoots. Like, especially I've seen, like, mother with young child, or, like, maternity shoots, where the woman is in kind of like a mermaid costume.
Oh,
like, it's like sort of like a very fancy, like a high-end looking, like, glittery, like, tail and fin type of situation. And so it'll just be like a pregnant woman, you know, just like on, like, you know, by, like, the lake shore or whatever, and she's got her mermaid costume on. It's very strange, and I think I've seen several of these. I think it's, like, gaining popularity. It's like a thing. People love mermaids.
Yes, it's true.
I don't.
It's closed.
Yeah, well.
Judge Ash is slamming the gavel on that one.
I mean, I just think that people don't realize that they're evil.
Well, that's the whole point of them, right? They lure you out to your death. I mean,
but that's, like, similar to what I'm saying about a shapeshifter. They look nice, or they can appear nice. They can appear great, but very evil, usually.
Are sprites and fairies evil?
Sometimes, not always.
Can be.
You can go either way. I mean, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, that's true.
Some of them are evil, some of them not so evil.
What about mummy movies? Into those?
I like that Brendan Fraser, remake of the classic Mummy. I had a really good time with that.
Mm-hmm. There's not really, I guess, a lot of mummy movies.
Yeah, I mean, that's really kind of the main one that's happened in recent years. There's not too many of them. I mean,
unexplored genre.
I wouldn't say I'm into mummies in the sense that I, like, think about them a lot, but I did enjoy that movie, and I did, as a child, like, for a while, I was kind of into, like, Egyptology type of, like, learning about the pyramids and the mummies and all the different, like, Egyptian gods and the hieroglyphs and all that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think that's cool.
Yeah. It's interesting because vampires seem to have a unique advantage in that they can be sexy too, and not a lot of the other creatures in these movies can be sexy. You know what I mean?
That definitely gives them an edge. I mean, most horror movies you watch, you're not necessarily, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but I think probably most people...
No, you cannot speak for everyone. I guarantee there's somebody out there who's into mummies.
Sure, but I'm saying for the larger part of the population aren't really attracted to probably most of the villains in most horror movies you watch, but vampires, you know, a lot of the times that's part of it.
Right. Yeah.
So that's definitely a thing.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I mean, that's one of their powers, right, is that makes them sexier, too, like, in addition to giving them eternal life. And
I think generally it just makes them, it makes them more attractive.
Glamourine and all that. Of course.
Of course.
Of course, let's not forget Deathbed, the bed that eats people.
That was a really special film. I mean, just the title is really all you need to know. Like,
it is a deathbed that eats people.
Very, Really, really very serious.
Yeah.
But, I also like to read scary stories, too.
Like what?
Like, you know, Dracula, of course, I really loved Frankenstein. I almost didn't even think of that as a scary story, though. Like, when you read it, I mean, there's, of course, you know, scary aspects, but it's really just kind of a sad story in a lot of ways, but really good. I really like, there's a Hitchcock movie that was made based off of this called Rebecca, but the book I really loved.
Is that a horror movie?
Yeah, it's basically a horror movie. Yes, it's a horror movie.
Okay, I've never read the book or seen the movie. So.
Oh, you should. It's really good. Yeah. It's one of these things where the book usually appears with like a really trashy cover.
That's probably why I've never read it.
The only reason I read it is because I took a class and like in college it was an English class, but the theme was like scary stories, and so that's when I read Frankenstein as well, and that's when I read Rebecca and like some other like scary novels that I probably wouldn't have gotten into otherwise.
Right.
Daphne du Maurier, I believe, is the author of that. Very, very good, worth checking out.
What other scary stories do you like?
I don't really have that much time to read scary stories lately, so I haven't really discovered a lot, but as a child, I was super into a lot of vampire stories. I read, what are the name of those? There's a collection of stories that I was obsessed with. It was, I don't know if Jane Yolen wrote all the stories or if she just collected them, but they were all vampire stories. I was like so into, I was particularly into this one story because the girl in the story was 16 and she had a little sister that was 8. And at the time I was 16 and I had a sister that was 8, so I was like, oh my god,
it's like me.
Yeah.
The connection.
It was actually a really dark story, because the girl who's 16 is a vampire, and she's like hiding the fact that she's a vampire from her family, and they're worried about her. They think she's like anorexic or something because she like doesn't eat very much at dinner, and like she's, you know, skulks around, you know. But then her little sister is actually molested by the babysitter that her parents have hired. So she goes to the babysitter and, like, gets inside his house by, like, flirting with him, and then she, like, murders him. But, I mean, it's, like, revenge. I mean, it's fair.
Okay.
I mean, he molested her sister. What else was she supposed to do?
I guess so.
But, yeah, I was obsessed with that story for a long time. Because she, like, eats this guy. And then she, like, the story ends with her, like, talking about her plans, how she, like, is still hiding from her family that she's a vampire. But when her sister turns 16, she's going to turn her into a vampire, too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Which, I mean, in retrospect, I think 16's a little young. Like, now I see 16-year-olds, and I'm like, maybe get a few more years on you. Like, 16 isn't quite, I think, the right point to freeze yourself. But, of course, when you are 16, you think you're at, like, the height of, like, you know, you can just be 16 forever. But I think, you know, get a little older, just old enough so people aren't constantly like, why is this weird kid here, like, skulking around, you know? Like, maybe like 25, you know, you're old enough that people aren't going to be constantly questioning why you're like... Yeah. Exactly. But anyway, yeah, I was super into reading that kind of stuff.
Now, we haven't talked about TV shows that are Halloween or scary. Of course, there's, like, two things, like there's like whole series that are just about that, like American Horror Story and Buffy and stuff, but then there's Halloween episodes of other shows that
I have so much to say about this, and I have so much to say about scary shows, But I also have some shows I'd like to talk about that are just general pleasures of the autumn that would kind of take us back out of the scariness. But I'll start with the scary shows. Huge Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan. And I've tried for years to get you into it in vain. And it's one of the things that I least understand about you is, like, how could you not like this?
Oh,
because
man.
to me, it's so good.
How much time do we have?
How could you not like this?
Okay, I didn't see it when it was first on, so that's first strike against me. If I watched it when it was on TV, maybe I would have a soft spot for it. I know this is intentional because it was on the WWWB, but the monsters and the scary faces and stuff do nothing for me, and I think that they're very poorly done, and I think the special effects on that show are abysmal.
It's campy.
It almost doesn't look like they meant it to be campy. I know that they had to tone it down for the children, you know, for the whatever time slot it was on. But you know, it's a very sad show too. Like, a lot of the storylines are incredibly depressing. Like when I've watched like a story arc or two, it's just always like misery and sadness, like in the end. So it is
a very dark show. That's true, but it's not as dark as Angel, which I can't even watch because it's too dark.
Which is a spin-off of Buffy that's also incredibly dark.
Yes. But no, Buffy is very dark, but for some reason sometimes, and I think the time in my life that I got into Buffy was a time when, like, I had, you know, angsty teenage feelings, and I think sometimes when I have, like, sad feelings, watching something about someone that also has those sad feelings actually makes me feel better. Mm-hmm. Like, if I'm in too good of a mood, sometimes I can't watch sad things. Mm-hmm. It goes back and forth. I mean, other times, if I'm, you know, you're sad, you don't want to watch something sad, you know. So, I mean, various times feeling various ways. But yes, it is, I will admit, it's a very dark show. Yeah. But they do still have fun.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's very, very heavy. But at the same time, I mean, it's very quippy, it's very fun, you know, there's lots of jokes, lots of pop culture references. Mm-hmm. It's a good time. And it is the kind of show where when you watch it, there's so many inside jokes that are, like, funny to you as, like, a fan that probably wouldn't be funny to, like, you as just a person trying to watch it and being like, why does Ash like this? But I'm not alone. There are a lot of people.
Oh, no. I would say it's funny because I find I tend to surround myself for whatever reason with people that like Buffy. Like, a lot of my friends separately do like Buffy, so there is something about the sensibility of the person that would like Buffy I do find appealing, even if I don't get the thing that you all seem to like. It's okay. We can like different things. It's okay. What else did you want to say about
scary shows? Well, American Horror Story is, you know, a more recent thing, of course, and I loved the first season of that. I thought it was just absolutely excellent, and I've been so disappointed with... I watched the second and the third season, and I was so disappointed that I'm done. I didn't see... I think season 4 was, like, Freak Show. We didn't see that, and now I think there's something with, like, a corn maze or something, and just, no, I'm done. And I'm sad, because the first season was so amazingly good. I was, like... It was, like, one of those things where you're watching a show, and you're more excited about a new show than you have been in a long time. So that was, like, a big letdown. But yeah, I also am really into Pretty Little Liars, which I would consider to be in some ways a horror show. And they always do, like, a really special Halloween episode every year. Very exciting. Another show that you just don't get.
I think Buffy's probably higher quality than Pretty Little Liars.
They're different shows. I mean, I think you have to, I mean, as Roger Ebert has taught us, you should judge something on its own merit, like, based on what is it trying to do, what kind of show is it. Buffy and Pretty Little Liars are different shows.
Buffy, I think, is something that probably is high quality that just doesn't speak to me. I think Pretty Little Liars is probably just not very good.
I will say, I think Buffy is better overarchingly, like, you know...
The writing is better.
50 years from now, people will look back on Buffy with a certain respect that they might not look back on Pretty Little Liars with as much. But I think that it's not just about having good writing or not having good writing, though. Because Pretty Little Liars is trying to do other things, like with fashion. Oh. But I know you don't really care about fashion, so that's, like, it's not doing much for you in that respect.
Not so much.
Because that's, like, a big part of why I watch that show is for the fashions. And I know you're just like, no. But coming out of, like, the scary stuff, just to talk about general shows I like to watch in autumn, Friday Night Lights. Okay. I'm a person who doesn't really like to watch actual sports that much. Like, okay, don't get me wrong. Like, if you have tickets to, like, a sporting event, I would go with you and have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'd go to a football game, a basketball game, and, you know, I like to be there in the crowd. I like wearing, you know, outfits for, like, the team, you know, like, various apparel. I like, you know, eating the foods. But not at all into just actually, like, sitting down inside my house and watching people playing a sport on the TV. Like, it's just not my thing. But Friday Night Lights, all about football, I totally love it. Like that is, and you will admit that that's a great show.
I love Friday Night Lights. It's a great show. And I don't like football that much either, so or sports in general. So
when I'm having like a craving to be like fall football, that's what I'm gonna go to is Friday Night Lights and just watch that. And that'll be enough for me. But the other show that I really wanted to talk about is Gilmore Girls, which, first of all, I think is just an extremely autumnal show because, I mean, it's mostly about following the school year. So, of course, it starts in the autumn, and it's set in a really small town that decorates for each holiday. So it's just, you know, pumpkins everywhere, and they're always having festivals. There's like a Thanksgiving festival where everybody's dressed as pilgrims. They have like a fire, you know, bonfires and starlight festivals, and for Christmas there's just, you know, white Christmas lights everywhere. So it's one of these shows where it's just like you really feel the season, and many of the episodes center around, since it's about families and family drama as well as being kind of about school stuff, so a lot of it centers around holidays because that's of course when a lot of family drama takes place. So you really feel the season with that show.
Oh yeah.
And so every year I'm excited to watch that show. I mean, honestly, I watch that show all year round, but especially in the autumn, I like to, you know, watch some of those episodes that really have like a great autumn feel to them. But I'm especially excited because this year, this autumn, I believe it's going to be November 25th, they're releasing Gilmore Girls Seasons, which is the long-awaited new, possibly final installment of Gilmore Girls. It's going to be, for anyone who doesn't know, it's going to be 4 90-minute episodes, just one set in each season. And I've been looking forward to this for a long time. Because, I mean, Gilmore Girls has been off the air for how long? Like, did it end in maybe 2007?
It's been like almost 10 years, I think.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, it was 2007, because I remember I was working at my first reporting job, and we were talking about it with somebody.
And it was the type of situation where I think when it ended, a lot of people wanted it to. A lot of people were so sad it was ending, they wanted more.
Right.
And then there were always rumors of there's going to be a movie or something, and then it would never happen. And so just knowing that that is happening finally this year is just another thing to be really excited about for this fall.
Was there any other TV shows you wanted to mention, or episodes, or anything?
I mean, there's so many different little episodes and stuff, but I don't necessarily need to mention them. I mean, people are aware that there is, you know, on Wikipedia, there's a list of Halloween TV specials.
Right.
And I always like to kind of look through that list and see, you know, what I need to hit.
Well, to kind of wrap it up, since I do have to go to work here soon, what is your favorite Halloween music?
I mean, I don't want to say this because like I feel like this is like super lame, but I'm gonna have to go with the Monster Mash.
Okay, I mean,
that's like, you know, it's a classic for a reason, but it's a lot of fun and I'm enjoying it. I mean, not that I ever honestly stopped enjoying it, but I hadn't really been listening to it that much lately in my life. But then now that I have a young child again, I remember last year we were listening to that with him and dancing around, and he was having such a good time that, you know, I'm really, you know, experiencing a renewed enjoyment for that song.
Yeah.
Of course, Thriller, I mean, is a great song.
Yes.
You know, there's, you know, it's obviously a classic for a reason as well. I really like, this is not exactly a Halloween song, but it is, I think, appropriate to include in a Halloween mixtape, and also featured on Friday Night Lights, the song Devil Town
by Daniel Johnston, but performed by Ryan Adams, I think. Yeah, I really love that song. Maybe it was Iron and Wine, I don't remember. I think they have both done versions of it. I don't remember which one was on the show, but that's a great song. There's a song, and I'm struggling to remember who this song is by. It's on the Juno soundtrack. It's like I'm a Vampire. Oh yeah. Camille Dawson, I think, or no.
Is it? I think it's by something. It's like Ants in Your Pants or something. Some other.
That's it, I believe. Yeah.
That song I really enjoy too. So.
Yeah, I guess there's not quite as many Halloween songs as Christmas, so it's a little less.
No, I mean, I definitely enjoy listening to a little bit of Halloween music, like, as I'm, like, getting into the season, but I definitely think Christmas is really where I go hardcore for the seasonal music.
Yeah.
And there really are basically no Thanksgiving songs.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
Come to think of it.
I don't think so. Except for the Addams Family Values.
Which, okay, there's something I should have mentioned.
Yeah.
Addams Family, of course, I love, but particularly...
I mean,
Addams Family Values.
Like your spirit animal.
Wednesday Addams.
Or sorry, Wednesday. Oh, jeez.
It's all right. Tuesday Addams.
Lightning bolts.
The other sister.
Yeah,
but Wednesday Addams. I'm so into her, and Christina Ricci just obviously does an excellent job. I mean, she's perfect in that role. But really, the ultimate scene, making it a wonderful Halloween and also Thanksgiving. Movie though is of course in Addams Family Values when the children are sent off to summer camp and forced to perform in a end of the year play. It's supposed to be of the Thanksgiving story.
Yes, but then
featuring the song "Eat Us" with the dancing food.
Oh yes, that was great. And then of course the Native Americans take their revenge on the Pilgrims.
Yes, well Wednesday kind of takes things into her own hands, and she's the Native American princess, and she burns the entire plate of the ground appropriately, some might say.
Exactly.
So, yes.
A little righteous revenge.
Yes. But no, I think, though, what we were saying about there aren't really any Thanksgiving songs, I think that's part of what I was saying about how the pleasures of Thanksgiving have grown on me over the years. But as a kid, it's a little harder to get into because, there's not really any songs, the special outfits are pretty few and far between, So it's really, as you get older and you really more appreciate the togetherness with family, and if you like to cook, and those things that are really pleasurable, but there's not as much flash to it. Which I think for some people is part of the appeal. It's just real solid, hardcore. Other than the fact that there is the, troubling aspect of the whole situation with the Native Americans. And, as an Indian, a person who does have Indian heritage, it's troubling for me as well. But I've decided that I can still celebrate it just as a time of togetherness and thankfulness. And, not so much celebrating the part where, the Pilgrims colonized the, lands or whatever.
Shady land dealings.
Yeah, like I was just, focusing on just, thankfulness and family and all of that. I do think it's a nice holiday. And, of course, my love to cook,
Yeah.
Really.
Well, I think this calls for a sequel in a couple months for the Christmas.
Yeah,
Christmas
I think. I mean, there's a lot to say about the Christmas season, and the thing is, like, I'm almost just at this point trying not to think about the Christmas season because, like, if I think about it, I'm gonna get so excited, but I need to like wait because there's like already enough happening with fall.
Right. Well, November 1st, I think that's when you start.
Well, I mean,
that's Thanksgiving.
In November.
November 1st is Thanksgiving.
But we should start, Christmas shopping though, because if you wait until December to start, it's not a good scene. Because maybe on the next edition of this, we'll talk about, Christmas Eve spent in the store. It's rough times out there.
Exactly.
But
cool. Well, happy fall, and
thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
Cool. Thank you for being a guest on the Rob Burgess Show.
For sure.